Imagine a damp, overcast afternoon in the rural countryside. The wind is howling across a vast, empty field, bringing with it the sharp chill of impending rain. The sky is a bruised canvas of gray and purple. For centuries, this specific patch of earth has been nothing more than agricultural land. Generations of farmers have walked over it, plowed it, sowed seeds into it, and harvested crops from it. Tractors have rolled over its surface. Sheep have grazed on its grass. But beneath the boots of the farmers, beneath the roots of the crops, and beneath a thick layer of dark, wet soil, something ancient and unimaginably valuable has been waiting in the dark. It has been waiting for more than 1,000 years. On this particular day, an amateur metal detectorist is walking this very field. He sweeps his machine back and forth in a slow, rhythmic arc left to right to left. It is a hobby that requires infinite patience. Most days, the machine sings its electronic tune only to reveal a rusty nail, a discarded soda can, or a piece of scrap tractor iron. But today, the machine emits a sharp, undeniable, and high-pitched scream. It is the unmistakable signature of precious metal. The detectorist drops to his knees. He takes out a small spade and begins to carefully peel back the layers of wet earth. He expects to find a lost modern coin, perhaps a dropped wedding band. Instead, as his gloved hands brush away the dark soil, he sees a flash of something that does not belong in the modern world. It is the dull, heavy gleam of ancient silver. Then he sees another piece, and another. He has just stumbled upon one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the century. Today, we are going to dive deep into the incredible true story of a massive Viking hoard found in a random, unassuming field. We're going to explore exactly what was pulled from the earth, how these ancient artifacts prove that the Vikings were part of a massive global trade network, and the haunting, unanswered question of who buried this unimaginable fortune, and why they never came back to retrieve it. When the detectorist first wiped the mud away from that initial piece of metal, his heart likely stopped in his chest. It was a silver arm ring, intricately stamped with ancient designs. Recognizing immediately that he had found something of profound historical importance, he did exactly what you were supposed to do in this situation. He stopped digging and called in the professionals. When the county archaeologist arrived, the true scale of the mystery began to unfold. As they carefully excavated the site, they realized that the person who buried this treasure more than a millennium ago was incredibly paranoid. They had actually constructed a decoy. Just a few inches below the surface, the archaeologists found a small collection of silver bullion. To a common grave robber or a thief in the 10th century, finding this shallow deposit would have been a moment of triumph. They would have grabbed the silver, assumed they had found the entirety of the hidden wealth, and walked away. But this shallow deposit was a calculated trick. It was a sacrificial layer designed to protect the true prize. When the archaeologists dug deeper, pushing past a false bottom of tightly packed gravel and soil, they found the real hoard. Buried deep in the earth was an astonishing collection of wealth. There were dozens of heavy silver arm rings, the kind worn by fearsome Norse warriors to display their status and wealth. There were massive silver ingots, heavy and cold to the touch. But most incredibly, nestled among the silver was a breathtakingly beautiful lidded vessel. It was entirely made of silver, chased with intricate, exotic motifs of leaping animals and stylized plants. This vessel was not made by Viking hands. It was an antique even when it was buried. Historians would later identify it as a Carolingian vessel, crafted somewhere in the Holy Roman Empire, perhaps in what is now France or Germany, 100 years before it ended up in this Scottish field. But the mystery did not end with the silver pot. The true wonder was what lay inside it. Because the vessel had a tight-fitting lid, it had created a microclimate that preserved organic materials that normally rot away into nothingness over 1,000 years. When experts in a state-of-the-art laboratory finally opened the lid, they found artifacts wrapped in layers of ancient textiles, leather, and astonishingly, silk. Let that sink in for a moment. We are talking about a Viking hoard buried in the muddy ground of the British Isles, containing silk. In the 9th and 10th centuries, silk was not manufactured anywhere in Europe. It had to travel thousands of miles along the Silk Road, originating in Byzantium, the Islamic world, or as far away as China. Inside this silver vessel, protected by the imported silk, were items of breathtaking craftsmanship and startling cultural diversity. There was a solid gold pin, shaped like a magnificent bird. There were large glass beads, glittering with vibrant colors, likely crafted in the Middle East. There were Anglo-Saxon brooches of exquisite detail. And perhaps most surprisingly, there was a magnificent silver Christian cross, intricately decorated with gold leaf and black enamel, depicting the symbols of the four evangelists. This single hole in the ground contained a literal melting pot of medieval cultures. It held items from the Anglo-Saxons, the Irish, the Carolingian Empire, the Scandinavian homelands, and the distant Islamic caliphates. Looking at this treasure is like looking at a physical map of the Viking world. To understand how all these disparate items ended up buried together in a random field, we have to completely change the way we think about the Vikings. Pop culture has painted a very specific, very bloody picture of the Norsemen. We imagine them purely as savage raiders, descending from their longships with axes in hand, burning monasteries, stealing gold, and leaving ruin in their wake. While it is undeniably true that the Vikings were fierce warriors and devastating raiders, they were also some of the most prolific, ambitious, and successful traders the world had ever seen. The Vikings did not just sail west to attack the British Isles. They sailed east, navigating the treacherous river systems of Eastern Europe, dragging their massive ships over land when necessary, until they reached the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. They established vital trade routes that connected the frozen north with the unimaginably wealthy empires of the south. They traded furs, amber, walrus ivory, and tragically, enslaved people in exchange for the finest luxuries of the medieval world. They traded with the great Byzantine city of Constantinople, which they called Miklagard, or the Great City. They traded with the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad. The presence of Middle Eastern glass and exotic silk inside a silver Carolingian pot buried in Britain perfectly encapsulates this massive, interconnected, and highly lucrative global network. But how did they conduct this trade? They did not have paper money, and while they sometimes used coins, they did not care what king's face was stamped on them. The Vikings operated on what historians call a bullion economy. In a bullion economy, the value of an item is determined entirely by the raw weight of the precious metal it contains. Silver was the primary currency of the Viking Age. It was the lifeblood of their trade. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of the hoard, the hack silver. Many of the beautiful arm rings, brooches, and ingots found in the dirt were not intact. They had been violently chopped, bent, and hacked into smaller pieces with an axe or a heavy chisel. To modern eyes, it seems like an act of vandalism to destroy a beautiful piece of jewelry. But to a Viking, a silver arm ring was just a medieval wallet. If a Viking trader wanted to buy a sword, a horse, or a loaf of bread, and the merchant demanded a specific weight in silver, the Viking would simply take off his arm ring, pull out a chisel, and hack off a piece until it balanced perfectly on a set of merchant scales. The hoard found in the field was full of this hacked silver. It was a working, practical collection of money, assembled piece by piece over a lifetime of raiding, trading, and dealing. So, we know what was buried, and we know how the global Viking economy allowed these incredible items to be gathered. But that brings us to the most haunting and enduring mystery of all. Who buried it and why? To answer that, we have to look at the political landscape of the British Isles during the time the treasure was hidden. This hoard was likely buried in the early 10th century, a time of absolute chaos, violence, and shifting borders. The British Isles were a patchwork of competing kingdoms. The Anglo-Saxons were desperately fighting to unify England under one Christian king. Meanwhile, various factions of Norsemen, Irish Scots, and native Britons were forming alliances, fighting each other, and fighting the Anglo-Saxons for dominance. Armies were constantly marching across the landscape. Villages were being sacked. Kings were being crowned and killed in rapid succession. In a world this volatile, there were no banks. There were no secure vaults where you could deposit your life savings. If you were a wealthy Viking warlord, a successful merchant, or a powerful noble, and you heard that a hostile army was marching toward your settlement, you had a very serious problem. You could not carry 50 pounds of solid silver and gold into a battle, nor could you easily flee with it if you needed to move quickly. The earth was the only bank vault available. The owner of this incredible fortune gathered the sum total of their life's work, their looted treasures, their trading profits, and their sacred heirlooms. They wrapped them carefully in leather and textiles. They placed the most precious items inside the antique silver vessel. They dug a deep hole in an unremarkable field, perhaps marking the spot by pacing out a specific distance from a prominent tree or a large boulder. They constructed the clever decoy layer to fool any thieves who might have been watching. And then they filled the hole, stamped down the dirt, and walked away, fully intending to return when the danger had passed. But they never came back. This is the silent tragedy at the heart of every buried hoard. The sheer value of the treasure tells us that the owner would never have abandoned it willingly. This was not a forgotten pocketful of loose change. This was a king's ransom. It was enough wealth to buy armies, build fleets, and secure a dynasty. The fact that it remained in the ground for 1,000 years tells us that something terrible happened to the person who buried it. Perhaps they rode off to fight in one of the many brutal battles of the era, such as the massive Battle of Brennenburg, and were struck down by a Saxon sword. Perhaps their ship was caught in a violent storm in the Irish Sea, sending them in their secret to the bottom of the ocean. Perhaps they succumbed to a sudden, violent illness, or were assassinated by a rival before they could whisper the location of the gold to their heir. Whatever their fate, their story ended abruptly. Their lips were sealed by death, and the location of the magnificent treasure faded from living memory. Over the centuries, the landscape changed. The markers they used to remember the spot rotted away or were moved. The land was divided, sold, and repurposed. Wars were fought over the fields. Kings rose and fell. The Industrial Revolution transformed the world, and 2 world wars shook the continent. And through it all, just a few feet below the surface, the gold and silver lay in total darkness, perfectly silent, holding onto the secrets of a vanished age. When a metal detectorist finally pulled these items back into the light of the modern world, he did more than just find precious metals. He reopened a chapter of history that had been closed for 10 centuries. But what actually happens when an ordinary person finds a multi-million-dollar treasure in a random field? Do they get to load it into the trunk of their car and drive away? In the United Kingdom, where this and many other incredible hoards have been found, there are very strict laws governing the discovery of ancient artifacts, specifically under the Treasure Act of 1996. You cannot simply keep a 1,000-year-old Viking hoard. You are legally obligated to report it to the authorities. Once the hoard is excavated and brought to a secure location, an independent committee of experts, historians, and metal valuers examines every single piece. They assess not just the raw value of the gold and silver, but the profound historical and cultural significance of the find. Once they arrive at a fair market value, which in the case of major Viking hoards can easily reach into the millions of dollars, museums are given the opportunity to raise the funds to purchase the treasure. This ensures that these priceless pieces of human heritage are kept in the public domain, available for study by scholars and for viewing by the general public, rather than disappearing into the vault of a private, wealthy collector. But the story has a very happy ending for the people who make the discovery. The millions of dollars raised by the museums are paid out as a reward. This massive financial windfall is typically split evenly 50-50 between the person who found the treasure with their metal detector and the owner of the land where it was buried. It is a completely life-changing amount of money, a sudden fortune unearthed on a random weekend afternoon, entirely by chance. It is staggering to think about the sheer volume of history that is still hiding right beneath our feet. We walk over the remnants of the past every single day without even realizing it. The fields we drive past on the highway, the forests we hike through, and even the very foundations of the towns and cities we live in are layered with the lost, forgotten, and purposefully hidden artifacts of the people who came before us. Every time it rains, every time a plow turns over a new furrow of soil, there's a chance that a piece of the past will finally see the sun again. The earth is an immense, uncatalogued museum, and we have barely scratched the surface of what it holds. This breathtaking discovery proves that history is not just something found in dusty textbooks or isolated behind the glass cases of distant museums. History is physical. It is tangible. It is buried in the mud, waiting for someone with enough patience, a good metal detector, and a stroke of incredible luck to come along and find it. Makes you wonder what might be buried deep in your own backyard, doesn't it? If you were handed a metal detector right now, where's the very first place you would go looking for buried treasure? Let me know your thoughts and your strategies in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the Viking Age and the incredible mysteries buried beneath the earth, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more fascinating historical deep dives, and share this with a fellow history lover. And if you want to hear another incredible story from the past, click on the video currently on your screen to learn about the lost Roman legions that marched into the fog and were never seen again. Thanks for watching, and keep exploring.